Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. I'm Lauren Milojevic. I'm the Director of Marketing and Business Development at Simplify Solutions. Today, we're excited to have our Senior Solution Architect, Beth McBreen, discussing and demoing how automated performance reporting on SAP Analytics Cloud. And also, after the webinar concludes, a short survey is going to appear. So if you guys are able to, please fill that out. We would really appreciate it. The feedback is super helpful. So please feel free to reach out to Beth or myself after the webinar ends with any questions. And now I'll hand it over to Beth and she can get started.
All right, thanks, Lauren. And thank you all for joining today's webinar. As Lauren mentioned, we're really going to focus today on performance management analytics, and maybe even more specific to that, our bridge reporting and price volume mix, and kind of talk a little bit about that and how we can actually accomplish that within SAP Analytics Cloud. I did want to mention, I saw that there was actually a typo in the initial invite where we also had, I think we had Analytics Cloud /BPC. So I just want to make sure and clarify to the audience here that we will be focusing on the solution within Analytics Cloud today and not BPC. So if you were specifically joining just to see, how this might work within BPC, unfortunately, we're not going to cover that today, but we, can certainly look at covering that at a later date. So anyway, as Lauren mentioned, I'm Beth McBreen. I'm a solution director at Simplify. I focus primarily on SAC solutioning, BPC solutioning. I've worked with both products for several years. Again, Simplify is a SAP partner. We really focus, that's kind of our bread and butter is within those two solutions. So after the webinar today, should you have any questions about what you've seen, any assistance, or again, need any help, I'm happy to answer any questions via email or other. So again, thanks for joining. So we'll get started here. I just have a couple slides and then we'll talk more. I'll actually go into a live demonstration, show you how the bridge reporting works. But at Simplify, we actually have an accelerator or a kind of packaged content that really aids or helps with the overall bridge reporting, PVM calculations, variance calculations, constant currency calcs, those type of things that we kind of package up together. So we'll talk about real fast like what that's all about, what it includes, and then I'm going to show you some of that in SAC. So typically, to kind of get started, usually have a business problem, right? And so what we typically see is companies that are trying to attempt the waterfall or the bridge reporting in Excel. And, again, trying to do that, the price volume mix calculations, depending on if you're doing a revenue bridge, for example, versus an OI bridge or operating income bridge. Revenue bridge, if you want to get to various levels of data, product groups, things of that nature. Some of that can get to be very tedious. There's the ability for reports to take a long time. Being able to add kind of commentary and things like that is, it can be difficult. But I think mostly, especially with building some of the bridge reporting in more of a manual fashion, it's really prone to error. That's what we've seen a lot of times, time and time out with companies, is that we have, again, a lot of this manual effort where links break and, or again, calculations are incorrect, and because you're just referencing cells, and again, it's just more prone to error. So in Analytics Cloud, you can absolutely build in this performance reporting so that it's in an automated fashion. Again, being able to kind of drive that accountability and business decisions up front versus doing all the legwork and trying to build all this stuff. So that's really when we look at from a business problem perspective. And our package content has kind of the following goals. Like we look at actuals versus, we've got versions for prior year, forecast, plan. Obviously, you can also have actual, Q1 versus Q2, you can have all that different variation as well. calculating the variances that are due to changes in your units sold, your pricing, your costs, right? And then kind of trying and eliminating all that impact that happens as it relates to currency and currency fluctuations. And then, also not just having the ability to create the calculation, but making it look nice, right? Actually having a nice dashboard or a nice print-ready report that you can publish out to a PDF or a PowerPoint, things of that nature. So all of that really is our goal, to be able to provide that. We've seen with some of the clients that we've actually implemented PVM bridge reporting for, as that it's reduced their efforts tremendously, right? Being able to run in SAC what we call data actions, running a few data actions and publishing, and again, being able to view the report versus, again, using more of a manual Excel environment, has really been able to make the bridge reporting far more efficient for our customers. So this spans across various different industries as well. So that's kind of, from a goal perspective of our prepackaged content, our prepackaged solution, if you will. From a reporting piece, we have kind of the standard config that we do for version comparisons, right? If we're doing a bridge or a walk between actual and budget, we've got standard comparisons, but then we're also doing the more detailed calculations that provide that price volume mix, and as I mentioned before, kind of that constant currency and just the overall variance calculation. We have data actions then that trigger each one of those calculations that will ultimately produce your bridge reports. So here's a couple of just quick screenshots. You're going to see these live in my demonstration, but as far as, again, kind of coming in, and if you were interested in looking at our prepackaged solution, these are the reports that are built as part of that. So we've got some of the initial P&L comparison that you saw in the original slide, or the slide before this, and then we have kind of our bridge reporting that is calculated, and that is both revenue, which obviously is which is a subset, is kind of our overall operating income bridge. Okay. So just real quick, so that you understand if this prepackaged content is something that you are interested in, you may be thinking, well, okay, maybe I have SAC today, but what do I need in order to be able to run these calculations? It does require planning licenses, so you will have to leverage a planning license in order to utilize kind of the data actions and the calculations that are taking place. The HANA Cloud Connector, typically to install that, and to broker kind of the connection between systems. And we have basically our model set up, all the calculations that are defined, and we have templates in order to be used. We also have kind of a sample data set that showcases, again, how the overall bridge works. We obviously can assist. We've done exercises where we've tried to just help clients and train them on how this works in Analytics Cloud. We've had companies approach us and ask us, to spend the time to just build it. So again, if you're looking for any support or assistance in that area, as you would like to build out this piece within Analytics Cloud, certainly let us know. And obviously, through the Cloud Connector, and typically we're dealing with, again, depending on the level of detail you want within your price volume mix and to what levels you will calculate, typically an automated pull via SAP, S4 is recommended. Certainly though, if you want to upload flat file or other options like going directly to SAP ERP or BW are absolutely options as well, as far as supported data sources with this content and with this solution. And then I just, as an example, just real fast to show you an example of a customer dashboard that we created that has kind of the overall operating income bridge. And again, you'll see a couple more in our live demo here. So I think that's probably best. That's all I have for slides. I want to show you just a couple examples and then kind of just walk through what it means and what the steps are and required in kind of building this type of reporting in SAC. So if you give me 1 second. You know, before we jump into SAC, I just had this example too that I wanted to set up, and this kind of sets the framework as we look at just kind of what I consider standard price volume mix. Right, this is our standard formula definition. This is what we define in our package content as well, and this is, you know, again, what we're utilizing. So, you know, again, this item below is just kind of showing where if we have sales dollars, we have volume or quantity, how we're actually creating these calculations, right? We've got our sales dollar change, and now we need to try and understand, well, how much of that is attributed towards price, volume, mix, right? So, again, we leverage the standard calculations. So I just wanted to call that out because I don't really have that anywhere. The question mark, what we've seen is in and around weighted average price, right? So the example that I have is actually at a business unit level. We've seen where we want to have that for revenue bridges. We may want to have it more granular, product groupings, things of that nature. So again, the calculations for price volume mix, we also account for exceptions, right? So it's, you know, it's perfect if we always have whatever your current period that you're looking at versus your reference. So if it's actual to budget, actual to prior year, for example, any of those reference periods, if we have quantity and sales in all of our information, that makes it a perfect calculation. What is not perfect is when we don't have quantities. You know, if we didn't sell it last year and now we're selling it this year, well, obviously we're building in also these exceptions, right? We know what they are, that is 100% then attributed to volume. If we've got, again, where there are exceptions where we're attributing it 100% to price. So things like that we also have built in. So again, it's hard to kind of show within SAC how we're actually building in the formula and kind of, but again, just wanted to call out and kind of show you how just that overall, what we're leveraging as kind of an overall definition. And then there are some, you know, based on company, again, tweaks to maybe what the definition is of the weighted average price. Okay. All right, so let's take a look in SAC. Come over here. And just a couple things to show, kind of call out. We're in SAC, we're in a story. So hopefully, you know, if you are familiar with Analytics Cloud, you're comfortable with the term story. It is like our display page, our reports, our graphs, our visualizations, our dashboards, everything, right? So what I have here is just a sample where you can see here at the bottom, we basically have 3 data actions that we run. So one, obviously, is our translation. So as part of this, we need to run currency translation so that we'll be able to kind of take the effect of currency translation into account on our bridge report. And secondly, we also then have the calculations that do a couple things. One is we have to create accounts. Within SAC, we obviously have our chart of accounts, which is our, you know, our net sales, our SAP 41,000 or whatever, you know, again, your account ID would be. We also are going to have for bridge calculations, we actually have bridge accounts. We have specific stat accounts that are able to store values. And what I mean by this is we have to aggregate data. So we're looking at revenue, for example. We're not looking at each individual net sales. If I expand on my report over here, you know, we've got, in my example, we have 3 accounts. Probably in, you know, in most companies, we may have 50 accounts that roll up to net sales. So what we're doing is we're aggregating the points that we want. So if it's net sales, if it's cost of goods sold, we're aggregating the data and we're posting that into individual accounts, stat accounts, if we will. So that allows us to aggregate. We also, if the customer is not using the sales price component anywhere else, we're calculating that, right? So we're taking our sales divided by our volume. We're taking our cost divided by our volume, and we're calculating that as well. So there's a couple different calculations that are taking place there. And that's why we have that separated out, right? So that's kind of our step 2. Step 1, we're translating. Step 2, we're doing all of our prep, almost is what I would kind of consider it, getting all of our data in the right buckets and where we want it to be. And then the final step is actually doing the calculation. And I'll kind of show you, I have another tab open here just to give you a sneak peek of when I say running a data action. So again, kind of click on this just so you can see the play button. If you're new to data actions anyway, you can open this up. We can determine what the target version is. I have a target version in our environment here that calculates the variance. So that's part of our step. And so my version is actually, the dollar amount is actually within my actual versus budget. Okay. And so what I'm doing then is I'm executing this data action, I'm running this data action, and that is what populates now each one of my buckets here within my bridge accounts. And so if I kind of pop over, this data action is, if I kind of jump over to data actions, I have another tab opened up to kind of save time so I don't have to navigate there. But this would be an example of where you can see where we're doing kind of OI bridge calculations. So we're getting both ends of the bridge, whether I'm calculating actual versus prior year, actual versus budget, that's my bridge, kind of the ends to my bridge, I guess. And then we're doing our calculations between volume, price, mix, our standard variances. This might be just our standard SG&A variances for our OI bridge. Finally, our FX translation, where it applies the FX impact. So as you can see, this is logic or business rules that we have already built out. And if I scroll down, you can see that it's quite involved as well. So what we have here are, again, all of our steps as it relates to each one of those within our volume, price, mix, and then any standard variances. Okay, so all of these steps is what is actually happening when I run this data action here. So I run the data action. What I don't have is typically you also will set up a filter so that you can select what time period you want to run it on as well. But once I run that, I can scoot over here to, let's look at our revenue bridge here first. So here's an example, print ready, right? Nice published report that we can push out to you. Our users can come in and take a look at it. We can push it out, distribute this as well. We can share it, right? And send an email out with a link so that they can access it, via SAC directly. But again, you can see here now my different components and then all the different layers. And so I start with revenue so that if you notice here, I've got all my different filters or different ways that I can kind of slice and dice my data. So here, for example, I could take it off of all material groups if I just wanted to focus on, my personal care line, maybe specifically on hand cream, for example. I can select that and it'll go ahead and just automatically refresh, right? If I want to look at everything within hand care, I can do that as well, right? So I can make changes down so that I can see my bridge by material group, by company code, by segment, so on and so forth. The other pieces, obviously, if I set this back to all material, you can see I also have currency, right? So I can see my my currency adjustment, and then I can also see, like, if I change this to local currency, I would expect that my impact would go to 0, which it does. Okay, so I can view this in local currency. Maybe this doesn't make sense. Maybe I need to specifically call out China as my company code, would probably make more sense since that's a foreign, right? So now I can, again, kind of look and see and slice and dice on every level and every dimension that you have set up. Okay, so similar to the revenue bridge that is encompassed within kind of our larger data calculation for our OI bridge. Right, so similar view, similar filters, again, gives you kind of that print ready ability to provide this to your leadership team or other. And so again, probably, you know, here you can see the buckets are a little bit different since we're not just focusing on revenue, where we've got our volume, our price. Now we've got things like our costs, and then certainly things like our SG&A variance. So that's where I talked about maybe just any of those standard variants and comparisons that we calculate versus the more complicated price volume. And then of course, just our currency adjustments as well. So you can see here then the ends are kind of our budgeted OI versus our actual OI. Okay. So I mean, that's basically, again, to kind of summarize, that is what our package content is doing right now. We have the 3 data actions that are, like I said, we've done this now for a couple different clients that are interested in really being able to build out this type of analysis and this type of reporting within SAC and in an automated fashion, right? Being able to set up the calcs, set up the definitions that's within your account dimension, and that's within your data actions. Being able to run those on the fly. You obviously have the ability to run your data actions. You can schedule those as well. But again, go back to my run calc, it really is a component of running these 3 data actions, and the data actions, as I showed you before, are comprised of multiple steps that get us to that full bridge view. All right, well, that is my example for today on kind of our bridge reporting. If you want more information, if this is something that your company is interested in, maybe you're trying to do it on your own and you just have a question as to how to set up some of the structure, you know, generally, I'm happy to help where I can. So if you have specific questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can help kind of help you understand, or again, train you on how to kind of set up these bridge reports, and more or less basically set up the calculations behind the bridge reports is probably the more important piece of it. So anyway, I thank you all for joining, and have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.